Here we have Deodar Cedar, Cedrus Deodara, one of the quote-unquote true cedars. And this one I believe I ordered online from maybe naturehillsnursery.com. So it was relatively small when I first purchased it, like maybe only 3 feet tall. Now it's about 7 feet tall. And these are pretty common in the landscape around here in Tennessee. And in general, they do very well. There's a couple different drawbacks. Every now and then they can be affected by root rot if they're in an area that's too wet. So if you have a drier part of your yard that's very well drained, especially on a slope, this can do very well. It's very tolerant of dry heat in the summer. But it's not a desert plant, so it does need some water. The other problem is that it's a little bit at the northern edge of its range, so it does have a problem with sometimes damage by early frosts in the fall or late frosts in the spring. The good news is that it almost always rebounds after that frost damage and puts on new growth. And let me show you an example of that here. This spring there was a damaging late frost, and the main leader somewhere down in here was killed, and it sent off a side shoot. And at the time this shoot came off, it was completely horizontal, but the growth habit of the Deodar cedar allows it to turn vertical and reestablish a new vertical leader. So that's 1.5 feet of new vertical growth in 1 year, even after getting a late start due to frost damage. And on the side branches that were not as badly affected by the frost because they were not as exposed, they put on plenty of lateral growth. I believe this is the regular species Deodar cedar, which is kind of a sea green color. You can see the contrast with that arbor vitae in the background. So it's a little bit bluer than normal. I have 3 other cultivars of Deodar cedar that I will show you. Right here I have 3 of the Fuchs cultivar, all in a row. And this is characterized by bluer foliage. Now the needles have contracted and collapsed in on themselves because these trees were sprayed by the sprinkler. And that is an interesting behavioral trait of the Deodar cedar and the Lebanese cedar for that matter. When they get sprayed by water, they close up their needles. Don't really know why that is, but they do that. Some more than others. This Fuchs seems to do that more than others. But this is the bluest one that I have. And they've put on impressive vertical growth over the years. The bottom is a little bit sparse, but they were like that when I got them. The other one, as you saw, was more full at the bottom because it started with a smaller tree and it's grown since then. But these are from a local nursery where I found them, and they had already kind of grown more vertically than horizontally, so there's not much at the bottom. Right next to that, I have the golden variety, golden deodar. And this one seems to grow more vigorously than the Fuchs. I believe I purchased this one at Home Depot, and there are 2 others back here. Right there, they're pretty thick back here, but you can see there's 2 others. They're pretty large. They grow relatively thick pretty quickly and seem to be very robust trees. And actually, for whatever reason, the golden one seems to experience frost damage less than the other 2. So maybe this gold variety originally came from a more hardy stock. Because of all the varieties, the golden one seems to experience the least frost damage. So I like the golden one. Obviously, if you want some yellow color in your landscape and you have a well-drained area where you can plant Deodar cedar, it's a good selection. Usually only the tips of the needles are frosted with gold. Let's see if I can get a view down below. Okay, now we're down at the bottom of the golden deodar, and you can see the foliage is more green down here. Some conifers that are a golden variety, the gold is mostly limited to the areas that get a lot of sun. So this area that's more shaded has just the regular green deodar color. Especially back in there, you can see it's pretty green. Okay, here's my last one. This is the Cashmere cultivar, and this is just basically standard dark green foliage. Pretty nice color. It does have a very open, somewhat scraggly branching structure. So not a lot of side branches on every branch. They just kind of continue outward, which gives it an unusual look. But this specimen has put on impressive vertical growth. And I would say vertically, it's like approaching 2.5 feet a year. So this Cashmere variety is the most aggressive vertically. Originally it was leaning and I had it staked up. I'm not sure that's even necessary anymore, but I'm going to leave the stake there just in case. And it does tolerate staking and respond to it very well. But beyond a certain point, right about there, it's got its own vertical growth tendency, so it does appear to grow vertically very well. I've got these planted facing east mainly, but they're basically in full sun. They get a little bit of afternoon shade, but I'm keeping the deodar mostly in full sun, and that's the best place to plant them. A pretty reliable conifer, in my opinion. I did lose 2 deodars to root rot, but I think they already had that before I put them in the ground, because they had been in pots for about 4 years before I bought them. That's the other thing. Because deodar does grow relatively fast, I think you're okay to buy a smaller specimen at a nursery or online and then grow it up large on your own. I don't really see the reason or logic in buying an existing large specimen from a nursery, because it's more likely to have problems, in my opinion. The foliage is a little bit prickly, so if that's a concern for you, I guess watch out for that. And I have not seen any fungal problems other than the root rot, so no surface problems with it.